As every single American in the country saw tonight, Governor Palin gave a formidable speech at the Republican National Convention in St. Paul, Minnesota, and it inspired me to write my own. Of course, mine won't be as good because instead of 3 nights holed up in a hotel room with a self commanded army of aides, I only had myself and 15 minutes in which to write it. Let us begin. Governor Palin addressed the Republican National Convention, speaking about clearing Obama's cloud of rhetoric. Now, I just had to examine her speech a little further when I heard her say that because it seemed to me that hers was a little harder to see through. In fact, after Mitt Romney's speech, I'm surprised I got to see any of the other speakers at all. First, though, we should take a moment to consult the expert on rhetoric, Aristotle himself. Lucky for me, I've been doing my homework, so maybe Mrs. Palin would like to take some notes. Aristotle says that the function of rhetoric is concerned with the non-particular things about which we deliberate, and with audiences of limited intellectual scope and limited capacity to follow an extended chain of reasoning. Well, the attendees of the RNC did rather enjoy her speech. Aristotle also says that rhetoric is to be used for cases in which the conclusion or evidence of an argument is somewhat in doubt, while deliberation or discussion is to be used for cases in which the general conclusion of an argument appears to admit of being one way or another. See, Sarah, I can do this too. The Republicans chose to make this convention about putting the country first. And if we take a closer look, we'll find ourselves wondering what exactly it is that she means. Well, maybe she meant that as a mother of a son who will deploy to Iraq, it doesn't matter if he has to stay for 100 years, she won't let him or any other soldier come home until they have achieved victory, the definition of which will be decided after it has been achieved. Or maybe she was talking about how she'll help families with disabilities, if, and only if, she rides McCain's ticket into the White House. Of course, that probably has nothing to do with the fact that she has a child with Down syndrome, and it is obviously linked in no way whatsoever with the happenstance that her sister also has a child with special needs. And why should it? It's the same as her standing up to big oil, trying to get a more diverse group of options when it comes to drilling in Anwar. That has nothing to do with the fact that her husband is a production operator of an oil field. I mean, she's not the only one in America with a family to feed, right? Thank goodness we can count on Governor Palin to stand up to special interests in Washington. And speaking of family, it's a good thing they're off limits, like both McCain and Obama said. Otherwise, she might have made a comment that was directed at Michelle Obama, which would have been just as rude as me saying that it was a lot easier to see how beautiful her daughter looked after the speech. Pregnant women are so much more obviously gleaming when they're not made to hide their pregnancy behind their mother's newborn son. Governor Palin wants to address the country with honesty, sincerity, and dignity. After all, her running mate has seen how evil is overcome, and it's very similar to the way women are overcome by the harsh reality of having a child conceived in the situation of rape or incest. But something like that should never happen, because Governor Palin wants to make public education better by not supplementing it with sex education. After all, we don't need to be teaching our children how to have sex, much less how to do it responsibly. Governor Palin wants to separate her ticket from the current administration by keeping government small, which is why she's suspended Alaska's fuel tax. Alaska doesn't need transportation funding because, as we all know, there are no roads in the tundra. And in separating her ticket from the Bush administration, she'll be sure to use her veto powers only on bills that get in the way of solar, wind, and geothermal special interest groups coming before $40 billion natural gas pipelines. Palin made it very clear tonight that she wanted to face the nation's matters squarely. And since there is only one man in the entire country who has fought for the people of the United States, there is no way to ignore the fact that John McCain is the man that America needs to put in the White House. And it's fitting. As more and more of our soldiers come home from our 100-year war with post-traumatic stress disorder, the best thing that we can do for them is to make the commander-in-chief one of their own, who truly understands the rigorous tortures of war. And the McCain-Palin ticket won't raise taxes no matter how much money you make, and no matter how bad anyone else might want it. Instead, she'll raise the country with a standard of ideals that only God Himself can judge. If we could just find out where He lives. Yes, America, if you want an administration who is concerned about your community organizations and the essence of the American dream, then do what's required of you in November and make John McCain and Sarah Palin the next great President and Vice President of the United States, who are in no way similar to Bush or Cheney. Thank you, and may God bless America, unless his name is Allah or Muhammad. And may God bless you, the American people, but only if you are rich, white, and Christian. Good night.